Okay, so our theme, real rest. But what is real rest? And are we tapping into real rest with Jesus, or just getting by on the rest that we know? Like we said, family, reading, garden, beach, cleaning. So I thought we'd look at 2 ways that we can tap into real rest with Jesus whilst looking at this passage. In the reading we heard, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." We hear an invite for all who are weary and burdened. What we don't hear is an invite for those who have it all together, for those who are sorted in life, because the reality is that in some way we are all burdened and weary, and Jesus knows this only too well because he's lived amongst us. He went on to say, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." So let's have a look at what a yoke is. You might know already what a yoke is. It's not the yellow thing in the middle of an egg. So a yoke is a wooden beam used to help carry or pull heavy objects by distributing the weight evenly on both shoulders. You've probably seen a picture of an ox with one arm, or you could even look at a brickie who often they have a long pole, don't they? And have you seen them go up the steps? And they've got the bricks on either side. Frightens me. But it's distributed the weight of the bricks out. So I'm not sure about you, but my first impression of a yoke sometimes, especially when you look at it on an ox, is that it's something heavy and restrictive. But the reality is that the yoke is there to help and guide, and it has someone at the helm. And in this case, it says that at the helm of this yoke is a gentle and humble heart. Jesus is offering his shoulders to even out your load. We just have to allow him to be at the helm of that yoke. And do we do that? How often do we hear or feel that saying, "You look like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders"? I'm sure at some point we've all felt this. And in a world where material things are so sought after, we can feel that we have everything or strive to have everything, and for a time we can find rest in these things. But eventually, the rest that we find in these things will run out, and we can still feel burdened, weary and unrested, even in the things we mentioned earlier. What it says in this passage is that we need to find rest for our soul, and that this is through Jesus. This is what real rest is. And this isn't to say that we shouldn't do the things that rest our minds and bodies, like we talked about. Rather, let's see how we can rest our souls in these things too. So one way we can do this is by inviting Jesus to be with us in those resting moments, whatever they may be. So, in with your family, you pray, you thank God for what you've got there. Invite Jesus on a walk, have a conversation with him whilst you're walking, pray. Invite him on that beach holiday, Emma. And he's free. You don't even have to pay for his flight and his accommodation. If you find rest in reading, choose wisely. Read 8 books, absolutely. But within those 8 books, try and have something in there that's got that Christian ethos behind it. And like I was talking to Angela before, and she was saying that often in the secular world, secular music, secular books, God will still speak to you through those. So be listening all the time, be open to listen to what he's got to say to you. Maybe listen to some music that helps you feel the presence of Jesus. Doesn't necessarily mean that that's got to be Christian music, but find rest within that music. Bring yourself close to that presence. You don't have to give up the rest you're used to. Just enhance that rest by resting your soul in Jesus too, within that rest. On that video, she talked about sleep. And sleep is one of those rests that we need. And we know how hard life can be when we have a lack of it. And if you start going through the menopause or perimenopause, honestly, where does sleep go? Honestly, it's ridiculous. So we try our hardest not to deprive ourselves of sleep. And if we miss, we try to catch up. We don't just carry on, we try to catch up on that sleep. You might have an earlier night, or you might catch a little snooze on the sofa. Another snooze on the sofa. Yet rest for our souls we often neglect and don't always try to catch up on. We just leave it where it is. In the song Peter chose earlier, it said, "Come to the fountain, dip your heart in the stream of life." Jesus is that fountain of life, a fountain of hope and a fountain of rest, a constant running fountain that we can tap into any time for rest for our souls. I don't know about you, but I could definitely do to dip my heart in that fountain more often to find some real rest. So that was the first way you could tap into real rest. What's the second? Now for me, this is what I would hope to strive for, and I'm sure it's what you would hope to strive for too, but it's what I think is the hardest. And it's finding rest in all situations, good or bad, and that's by submitting to his will, which is really difficult. And if you remember the other week when Angela had done a talk about, and she'd said about the tapestry and the mess, and I'd got upset about a situation that we were in, you know, that I chose to accept that we had to go through what we went through, but actually, did I submit to his will? No. So it's definitely something that I would strive for. And this is where we have to trust the gentle and humble heart behind the yoke reins. It's about being able to stay focused and trust that no matter whatever the situation, you are going to choose to find rest in Jesus. Allow him to take the burden. Allow him to give you rest no matter what. And it's much easier to do that, isn't it, when things are going swimmingly and everything's great. Not so easy when things are bad. But ultimately, this is what we should strive for, to be able to find rest no matter what, trusting that whatever is to come is his will, and that our burdens will be made lighter by resting our souls in him, in everything that we do. And I don't say this because I know how to do it. I say this because this is what I would love to be able to do, to just submit and go by his will. I'd love to find real rest for my soul, no matter the situation. I think the only time I've ever come close is when my brother was in hospital, and he was really, really poorly, and he was going to have to go for some surgery, and the outcome could be really bad. And I couldn't say that I submitted to his will. Like, the words wouldn't come out of my mouth. But I found a song that was called Thy Will, and I was out walking at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I played the song over and over and over again, and I cried the whole time. For me, that was me submitting, saying, your will be done. And I never said the words, but I'm pretty sure he knew exactly what I meant, and that's probably the only time that I've ever really submitted fully to his will. So, whether you decide to invite Jesus along when you next rest, or if you decide to find rest in every situation, just make sure that you rest. Rest for your body, rest for your mind, but most of all, take real rest for your soul in Jesus.